in the cell of the patient that they forcibly removed, the same symbol, repeated over and over again. A star with a kind of branch at its center. The most astonishing thing is that this poor wretch was visited by Sarah Hawkins. What was their relationship? If I find him, will I learn more about the death of this enigmatic woman? Dr. Colden's plan did not work. Another doctor, perhaps her superior, caught her in the act and she had to go upstairs, without me. The guards are still in front of the door, and I'm in no condition to fight. I must find a way to create a diversion. I've got two possibilities to create the diversion that will allow me to get to the floor above unnoticed, the electric machine or the gas piping system. One or the other should allow me to create enough chaos for the guards to leave their posts. I discovered a strange electric machine. It links two vats filled with a translucent liquid, in which huge organs are floating, to a power-up system that runs to a dentist's chair. I've got no idea what it's used for, but if I could overload the thing, it might create the diversion I need. One of the inmates is ready to help me if I find him some sleeping pills. In exchange, he swears to me that he can draw the attention of the member of the asylum staff who is on guard in front of the morgue. There's an installation that seems to supply the whole complex with gas. The cells are fitted out so that there is a continuous feed. If I could get the pressure to build up, I might be able to blow it up and create a diversion. This man, Francis Sanders, died right before my eyes. Tortured by the doctor, a dirty bandage covering his eyes, dying. He was lifted off the ground and his body twisted as if some invisible power was handling it. I didn't see anything but, with the gas they send into the cells, the injections, I don't know what's true. He accused Sarah Hawkins just before he died. That confirms the fact that they knew each other. Mental trauma, the death of Francis Sanders. The weirdness of Francis Sanders' death went far beyond anything Pierce had ever seen. Lifted off his feet by an invisible force, the poor man's body was carried into the air before being thrown violently against the bars of his hiding place. Pierce, powerless, watched the limbs break and Sanders' body crumble to the ground. During long moments of agony, the detective saw nothing that could explain this event. Weakened by his wounds, and the operations he could remember undergoing, Pierce begins to question his ability to tell the difference between reality and the nightmares that haunt him. Sanity, shaken. The ordeals you have gone through have left their mark, but you still manage as best you can. You keep your mind busy in order to chase away doubts and painful memories. You still have some way to go. Who knows where your mind could lead you along the paths of insanity? Francis Sanders, age 47, occupation, art dealer. Francis Sanders knew Sarah Hawkins so well that he accused her of being the source of his suffering. The man gouged his eyes out with his own hands and smeared the walls of his cell with esoteric symbols. He seemed to be obsessed with a Shambler linked to Sarah Hawkins. He died before my eyes, in circumstances that I cannot explain. Chapter 6, Hawkins Mansion. Pierce woke up in an asylum, installed in the cellars of the Riverside Institute. He met Dr. Colden, a female friend of Bradley, who helped him to escape. Wandering through the corridors of this place where Dr. Fuller reigned supreme, Pierce was able to talk to a man called Francis Sanders. Before dying in full view of the detective, he accused Sarah Hawkins of being the cause of his torments. Pierce finally left the accursed building, accompanied by Bradley and Colden. The companions in misfortune decide to use the Hawkins mansion as a hideout.
Who goes there?
That nightmare again. I need a drink.
You're awake, Mr. Pierce. How do you feel?
Did I sleep long?
The day's only starting. It's fine.
How's our fugitive? Dr. Fuller hasn't reported your disappearance to the force, but that'll come soon.
Bradley?
Who else would it be?
Mr. Pierce, are you all right? You look like you saw a ghost.
There are things I can't explain.
Tell us. What happened?
I have flashbacks. They haunt me.
What did they do to you?
There was that Dr. Fuller and a nurse. Blood everywhere. My legs, the pain, I couldn't bear it. I was screaming. They injected me with something. I woke up at the Institute. Bradley was there.
And how you scared us. You seemed demented.
You likely woke up during the anesthesia. No wonder those memories haunt you. What in God's name were they doing to you?
What happened afterwards?
When I woke up the second time, I was in a padded cell. That's where you found me, Doctor. After you released me, I got a good look at what's in store for the patients of the Riverside Institute. Hallucinogenic gas pumped into the cells. An infernal machine. Horrific medical experiments.
Impossible. Dr. Fuller would never do such a thing.
You should believe it, Ethan. What Mr. Pierce saw is precisely what I've been trying to prove. Did you discover anything else?
I met a Francis Sanders. Do you know him?
Of course, he's a patient. Or was. I haven't seen him since Dr. Fuller had him transferred to the basement.
He knew Sarah Hawkins, and that's what killed him.
What? How did he die?
I'm not sure I can explain it.
Tell me how Mr. Sanders died.
I didn't see what, but something was there with us.
Of what do you speak?
Sanders said it was Sarah Hawkins' visitor. He spoke of it like a living being.
Sarah Hawkins? Have I missed something here? This makes no sense. I don't see how it can help crack the Hawkins case.
You really think she's involved? How could she have murdered Mr. Sanders?
Francis Sanders mentioned Mrs. Hawkins just before dying. It's no coincidence.
You know, Francis Sanders was a well-known art collector. I guess you can still pay a visit to his wife, Irene Sanders.
An art collector, you say? That's probably how they met.
If you plan on having dinner at the Sanders household, please spare the widow the tale of her late husband's suffering.
I don't agree. She deserves the truth.
But that truth may be biased. We don't know the bottom of it.
You're right. Without a plausible explanation for what I saw, let's not jump to conclusions.
That seems wise indeed.
Very well. I'll go to see Francis's widow. Perhaps I'll find a link between her husband's death and Sarah Hawkins.
Don't end up in the hospital this time.
I'll do my best.
Let us go now and learn the truth about what's happening on this island.
The other night's events are still confused in my head.
October 28, 1924, Hawkins Manor. I finally reached the stair that lead to the first floor of the Riverside Institute, but on the way I inhaled some gas that was leaking from a damaged pipe and I passed out. I remember Bradley, alive? Really, who was talking to me? And I came to in the Hawkins mansion. I must understand what I'm doing here and what happened next. The Sanders and Sarah Hawkins were close, it's undeniable. The widow didn't tell me everything. But her house speaks for her. Everything began with Francis Sanders' obsession with the Shambler, an exceptional painting in more ways than one. Dr. Fuller, age 52, occupation, Riverside senior physician. Dr. Fuller reigns as the undisputed master of the Riverside Institute and its cellars, in which he carries out illegal experiments on his patients. I don't know what he has done to me, but I shouldn't be back on my feet so soon after my fall when the tunnels under the Hawkins mansion caved in. This man is dangerous, and I'd swear that he knows more about all this business than he's willing to tell. Chapter 6, Sanders' Residence. Pierce, Colden, and Bradley decided to team up to solve the Sarah Hawkins case. They have a new trail to follow: Francis Sanders, an art collector and friend of the painter, who died right in front of Pierce. The detective goes to his house in order to speak to his widow about the Shambler that the unfortunate man mentioned before he died.
What can I do for you, sir?
Mrs. Sanders, I'm a private detective. We must talk about your husband and his ties to Sarah Hawkins. Can I come in?
You may. However, before we go any further, please know that my husband died yesterday.
That is precisely what brings me here.
Well, well, look who's here. You know each other.
We met briefly. Time enough to iron out a few matters. The main thing is that we understood one another. The brave detective has a talent for sticking his nose into my business.
I bump into her every time I'm investigating someone's death.
It's a small island, detective. My island. It's better that it's you bumping into me.
You're investigating Francis' death. Why? Who hired you?
I spoke to Francis before he died. His story suggests a link to a case I'm working on.
Well, since this business has got nothing to do with me, I'll be in your husband's office, Irene. We'll carry on later.
Very well, Miss Baker. This way, Mr. Pierce. And do make yourself comfortable. It would seem that you have much to tell me. May I inquire as to when you had the opportunity to talk to my husband?
Yesterday, I met him at the hospital. He spoke to me about Sarah Hawkins.
Oh, of course he spoke to you about her. That's all he talked about. Sarah Hawkins and her paintings. Please forgive my tone. The fact is that I have not been allowed to see him since he was interned. You, on the other hand, a perfect stranger, were able to see him and even talk with him the day he died. How was he? Were you present when he had this attack? What happened?
What happened to your husband is terrible, Mrs. Sanders. But from what I saw, it was inevitable. The man I met yesterday had lost his reason. He suffers no longer, if you would allow me such a platitude.
Of course. Thank you for your kind words. Nobody in that hospital would have deigned to speak them to me. However, it will require more than that to soothe my mind. I need to understand. How could this happen? In a reputed institute? And right before your eyes. Did you not do anything to help him?
Mrs. Sanders, I understand your grief, and I extend my deepest condolences to you. But I had nothing to do with the death of your husband. I've just arrived on Darkwater. I'm investigating the death of the Hawkins family.
The death of the Hawkins family? You mean it was not an accident? This accursed island knows only tragedy after tragedy. You too would be advised to flee it like the plague. Oh, I'm tired, Mr. Pierce. I would be grateful if you could tell me what you expect of me, and then leave.
Did your husband talk to you about Sarah Hawkins' visitor? A Shambler, to use his precise terms.
Well, you can imagine that's all he talked about. It's exhibited at the center of the gallery. No better place for the painting that endowed him with the privilege of such a shameful and miserable end to his life.
Hold on. The Shambler is a painting by Sarah Hawkins.
Who else to paint such horrors? Take a look for yourself, if you feel so inclined.
It is my only lead at this stage. I suppose I have nothing to lose.
Then you have paid no heed. For my part, I refuse to set foot in that gallery again. But if you're so eager to see it, I would urge you to make the most of your visit, because I count on ridding myself of that thing as soon as I can.
Thank you, Mrs. Sanders. I won't be long.
October 28, 1924, Sanders' residence. The Shambler is a painting. Irene Sanders doesn't seem to know what she hates the most, Sarah Hawkins or her work. The fact remains that she accuses her of costing her husband sanity. He apparently gouged his own eyes out under the influence of the painting. I must see it. The key to the gallery is probably in the office. Irene Sanders, age 41, occupation, none. It's clear that she holds Sarah Hawkins responsible for the death of her husband. But what I don't understand about Irene Sanders is this mix of sadness and insensitivity. It looks like she had given up on her husband long before his horrid death in the cellars of the Riverside Institute.
Did she really care for him after all?
Dear Madam, I acknowledge receipt of the letter in which you demand the body of your deceased husband. I'm sorry to inform you that I cannot agree to return his body to you. At the moment of his internment, you signed a discharge, allowing me to dispose of his body as I see fit. I extend my deepest condolences to you. Thomas Fuller.
The day the Shambler came into the Sanders' lives. A house of artists. Frances Sanders and Sarah Hawkins were close. Friends, even? Sanders' accession register. He wrote beside the Shambler, "Finally." What did Sarah Hawkins fear so much that she didn't want to sell the painting? He finally won. Was Sanders aware of his imminent doom? She first refused to sell the painting. How did that make her feel? Was she jealous of Sarah Hawkins? The Shambler. I need to see it. Is this dagger part of Sanders' collection, or was he seeking to acquire it?
Art and Mysticism, Forgotten Objects, is a collection written by Francis Sanders. In it, he catalogs and categorizes objects from all ages and origins that are linked to occult or mystical practices. It is open at the page of a dagger that bears a symbol that is not unknown to me.
Let's see what this cylinder has to say once it's inserted in a phonograph.
Irene, I made a mistake. I fear that it might be too late for me. Nobody should enter, except to burn everything. I never had the courage. Pay somebody to do it. He's inside my head. I see him behind my eyelids each time I shut my eyes. I can't take any more. I can't hold him back. Forgive me.
That accursed gallery. Those accursed paintings, that accursed Sarah.
I could use one of those. A strange Amerindian pendant. Strange. For months, Sarah Hawkins refused to part with her painting, to finally give it away for nothing.
Dear Francis, I beg you to give up all hope of ever owning this accursed painting. If our friendship has any meaning for you, please spare me the weight of guilt. I cannot be the architect of your fall. I beg you, my dear friend, forget the Shambler. Your friend, Sarah Hawkins.
Another volume of the Reverend's wife's diary.
This volume spends some time on Reverend Whitewood's community. His wife expresses her worries about the strange dreams that the Reverend's congregation are having since their arrival on the island. Some members of the community, her husband included, began to speak of their vision as a messenger sent by God. She is scared that they will suffer the same fate as the lost tribe.
That's twice you've stepped on my toes, Detective. Try not to make a habit of it.
I've got a lot of bad habits.
Some can be more fatal than others. What have you come looking for in this gallery?
I'm not here to cause trouble, if that's what's worrying you.
Worry me? Don't overestimate yourself. If the last beating wasn't enough for you, I can always give it another go. But as long as you keep out of my way, you're free to carry on with your visit.
I found this drawing of a dagger. Did you come across anything like it in your reading?
Perhaps. I saw several daggers in the ledgers. I could always check. What I didn't find, however, was the slightest reason why I should help you, Detective.
I don't need your services. I can manage all on my own, thanks.
Do it then.
It is a kind of encyclopedia of monstrous and unknown creatures. I'm beginning to believe that they exist. Mental trauma. Pierce read an ancient treatise, the Malleus Bestiarium. This bestiary makes an inventory of numerous creatures from the occult world or parallel dimensions. The very nature of its knowledge makes it an unholy book. By reading it, Pierce lost some of his sanity. The dimensional Shambler comes from a dark and inhospitable dimension, where the rarity of food sources keeps it in a state of permanent starvation. This is why it is in a constant state of readiness to travel to other dimensions in order to feed on its inhabitants. Make sure you never weaken the veils of your dimension, otherwise you risk attracting this very dangerous creature. Should this happen, you just have to lay eyes upon it for its being to anchor itself in your dimension and to allow it to rip you open with its claws. Malleus Bestiarum, men will gather the knowledge through the lines dictated to me by the great old ones, but also in other volumes. The visions that assail me whisper me names and silhouettes of mystical creatures. Soon the Malleus Monstrorum, repository of all anatomical, cosmic, and dimensional knowledge, will be seen as the authoritative work. This book, unholy among the most cursed books, will one day be the final rampart between man and the predators that are waiting to devour him, hidden behind the veils of parallel dimensions.
These artifacts date from pre-Columbian times. The man transformed an entire wing of his manor into an art gallery. Why was he so interested in old weapons? The public entrance to the gallery. What the hell was that? This dagger looks different.
What's the matter with you? You sure you won't be needing that hand? You're losing it, Detective. At this rate, you're right. The bottle will get you before I do.
You didn't see anything.
I saw you within an inch of putting a dagger through your forearm. Did I miss something more interesting?
I was attacked by a creature. I pushed it back, I think.
I think so too.
I ran, screamed, broke a pane of glass. You were in the next room and you didn't hear a thing.
If I hadn't heard a thing, I'd still be in the other room. The door was blocked. I got in as soon as I could. I like to look after my goods.
You mean me?
Don't flatter yourself, sweetheart. I'm talking about the contents of this gallery. And by the way, where do you think you're going with that dagger?
It saved my life. It's an extraordinary dagger.
You should talk to Algernon Drake. He's an antique dealer here on Darkwater. He'll tell you all about it. From what I saw in the ledgers, it was him who sold it to Sanders.
The creature, this dagger, was the only weapon capable of pushing it back. If Hawkins was trying to get rid of this Shambler, she might have made contact with Drake. This antique dealer has a good knowledge of the occult. I have nothing to lose by meeting him.
You've got your spunk back. Go where you want. I'm staying here to talk business with Irene.